The day the global ice age started, 28 weeks later, human nature was also frozen in the ice. The living circumstances were dire as people without the right equipment froze. Our main character was walking through this landscape, appearing unperturbed. Glancing around, he remarked that it seemed like this place hadn't been explored yet. Food and fuel, once easy to obtain, had become extremely precious. Cities were buried under the ice, and the ice was thick enough to walk on, or so he thought. However, the moment he stepped on it and started sliding, he heard a huge noise, causing panic as it sounded like an earthquake. As the ground cracked beneath him, he reflected that this frozen world was like God telling them human civilization is as fragile as thin ice, vulnerable to a single blow. He then fell through the huge crack that formed beneath him, cursing his impending demise. Turning to his right, he clung to his ice hiking gear, begging for it not to break. Unfortunately, he continued sliding down, unable to stop his fall. Luckily, he landed on the roof of a supermarket filled with snow that cushioned his landing. If it were ice, he would have died there. But as he was about to recall a saying about escaping death, his joy faded as he faced a creature with sharp teeth, 4 eyes, and 4 horns named White Skin. What's even more despairing in this frozen world is these creatures hunting humans. As he ran for his life, a blue parasite-looking thing hovered above them, observing. This situation is truly disastrous for our boy, but suddenly, huge stalactites formed above the monster and then dropped down on it, killing it. Looking at it, our protagonist wondered if it was because the noise was too loud that the ice stalactites were shaken down. However, he brushed it off, since it had saved his life. Suddenly, crumbling rocks from above started falling towards him. One fell right in front of him, indicating a bad situation as he was going to be buried alive. Moments later, he ended up fully buried, and the parasite we saw earlier was near him. It approached his unburied hand and then started using some sort of power, fusing with him. Suddenly, his eyes opened, and he was shocked to find that one of his eyes had turned blue. Wondering what just happened and why he was daydreaming there, he also scratched the back of his neck, unaware that the parasite had entered his body. Deciding to forget what just happened, and having been outside for long enough, he decided to quickly go back home. Luckily, he spotted a chocolate lying on the ground, happy that at least he wouldn't return empty-handed today. A few moments later, he arrived at the entrance of the lair he was living in. He noted that because most of the city was frozen by ice, the only way home was through this passage. Day after day, he didn't know how long this kind of life would last, but compared to outside, the situation in the building was also quite bad. When the disaster struck, many people were trapped in this building, and now with scarce supplies, he dared not imagine what these people would do. In this apocalyptic world, no one could guarantee that they would not cross that line. He then noticed that it seemed like those guys hadn't started patrolling today. He had to hurry home before they arrived. Arriving near his door, he knocked on it, and a girl named Xiaoming opened it. He was shocked that Xiaoming opened the door so quickly and asked if she hadn't locked it. But as he approached, she hugged him and said she just wanted to see him quickly. Then she asked if he didn't want to see her quickly too. Blushing, he responded that of course he did. However, he reminded her to securely lock the door. She agreed, but questioned if locking his door was more important than his girlfriend, to which he showed her the chocolate he brought. Curious, she asked what it was, and he replied that it was chocolate. Delighted, she hugged him and gave him a kiss, calling him the best. She then inquired if he only brought one, to which he explained that he could only find one and almost got eaten by monsters for it. Urging her to eat it quickly, he prepared to leave, but she noticed his backpack, her expression turning sour. In a different room, he sat near a fire, pondering what to do. It had been several days since he found decent food. He wondered if they had to eat the seeds he had collected before. The situation with the seeds they had planted was not very optimistic. If they ate the seeds, there would be no hope at all. If they continued like this, everyone would lose their minds. Holding the meat from the monster that had chased him earlier, he examined it and mused that if the meat of those monsters was not poisonous, the people in this building wouldn't have to endure hunger. But looking on the bright side, at least the fat from these monsters was good fuel for fire. At least in this frozen world, they didn't freeze to death. Glancing at the date, he realized it was Valentine's Day. He had actually forgotten. He rushed to the living room and called out his girlfriend's name, apologizing for forgetting. However, she was nowhere to be found. Wondering where she went, he heard an intentional knock on his door, recognizing it as his girlfriend's pattern. Puzzled as to why she went outside and what she was doing, he opened the door, only to be struck in the face by a metal bat. The force sent him flying, and as he struggled to regain his senses, he saw his girlfriend by a blonde guy's side, hugging him. Bleeding and in pain, our protagonist confronts her, asking why she betrayed him to follow Daylong. She bursts into anger, questioning how he could even ask, wondering if he thinks he can deceive her with a piece of chocolate. She asks if he believes she doesn't know he's hidden all the food. Continuing, she points out the large bag he was wearing, questioning if he only brought back air. Accusing him of lying even to his girlfriend, she questions if he's still human. Daylong then leans down next to our protagonist, expressing pity for him as fellow men. He offers advice, stating that in this apocalyptic world, it's the law of the jungle, not a civilized society. He emphasizes that Mo can't even support his own women, so who would be willing to follow him? Weaklings, he claims, have only two choices: depend on the strong or be preyed upon by the weak. With a smirk, he demands Mo hand over his food, to which Mo denies having any. Seeing Mo's refusal to depend on the strong, Daylong decides they will prey upon him instead. As Mo asks what they're going to do, Daylong breaks his leg with a golf club, then strikes his face and hand. Relentlessly, Daylong and his gang continue striking him until he's unrecognizable. A member of the gang informs Daylong that they only found rotten millet after searching the entire house. Daylong suggests using weaklings as food, instructing his associate to bring him a knife to cut him up. In his fading consciousness, Mo reflects that this is the ending he least wanted to see. If there is another life, he wishes to survive. Suddenly, he finds himself in a completely different location. Opening his eyes, he jumps up in terror, questioning what's happening, realizing he's unharmed despite having died. He found himself 24 hours before the onset of the global ice age. Protests in Queen's Park were still ongoing, with the city police department dispatching a large number of officers to maintain order. Meanwhile, the elites in Manhattan indulged in their exclusive party, while Brooklyn's gangs conducted transactions in the grimiest streets. The entire city remained unaware of the impending catastrophe, except for one person, our protagonist. Suddenly, an aurora appeared in the sky, capturing everyone's attention as they clamored to take photos. However, Mo knew this was a harbinger of the Ice Age. Just then, someone called him, and he recognized the caller as Xiao Ming. Recalling her derogatory remarks about being a weak woman who could only rely on the strong before he met his demise, fueled his anger. Blinded by disdain for her deceitful appearance, he resolved to end it. Answering the call, she inquired if he was still working overtime and remarked about the beautiful aurora. Then she brazenly asked for money, claiming her credit card was maxed out. Instead of assisting her, he decided it was time to sever ties. He informed her they should break up and instructed her not to contact him again. Shocked, she demanded to know what was wrong and if he was serious, but he remained silent and deleted her contact from his phone. With this second chance, he resolved that women like her, who would bring him harm, would freeze to death in the impending ice age. He understood the gravity of this opportunity and vowed to prepare diligently. In his previous life, no, he corrected himself. In the previous loop, he had failed. Within the next 24 hours, before the ice age descended, temperatures would gradually plummet to freezing point. From now on, there are less than 28 hours left before the world freezes. Initially seeming like an ample amount of time as temperatures drop, people will realize the severity of the problem. The already unstable society will descend into further chaos. Thus, he only has 1 hour left to gather supplies. Besides the essentials, such as food and water, they also need protection like guns in the increasingly chaotic environment. Suddenly, 2 police officers stop him, deeming him suspicious for wandering the streets so late. One officer steps out of the car and commands Mo to stand still, pointing a gun at him. Meanwhile, the other officer reports a suspected robber on 4th Avenue. Mo realizes they've mistaken him for the robber, considering the recent neighborhood restrictions. With his hands raised, Mo explains he only has a phone in his hand. Frustrated, he curses inwardly, knowing he doesn't have time to waste with these officers. The rookie officer, instructed by his superior, approaches cautiously. Nervous, he demands to see inside Mo's bag. Mo complies, revealing his belongings, and explains he's just a regular worker heading home. However, the jittery officer, filled with unease, mistakes an innocent object for a weapon and shoots at Mo. In this dire situation, with a second chance at life slipping away, Mo decides he wants to live. Suddenly his eye, tainted blue from the parasite, activates and a blue aura surrounds him. Perplexed, He wonders what's going on. He can now perceive the bullets clearly, and if time is slowing down. In the midst of the chaos, Mo manages to dodge the first bullet, realizing it's not an illusion as the officer fires multiple shots at him. Displaying an almost effortless grace, Mo evades the bullets with mere steps, unwilling to waste time dealing with ignorant individuals. Suddenly, something inexplicable occurs. The bullets begin to freeze in mid-air. With astonishing speed, Mo advances towards the rookie officer and delivers a powerful punch, knocking him senseless. The impact is so forceful that the officer's eye pops out, sending him flying backward. As the senior officer turns to see his colleague distorted and probably dead, panic sets in. He falls on his ass, demanding answers about what just happened to the rookie. In a display of both power and uncertainty, Mo finds himself surrounded by an aura of ice. With a menacing gaze, he admits he doesn't know what he is, leaving the officer to confront the inexplicable display of abilities before him. The pig began speaking over the radio, announcing that the suspect had escaped, repeating the message for emphasis. Despite witnessing it himself, he found it hard to believe. With his newfound power, he swiftly departed the scene, running until he reached his apartment. Collapsing in his room, panting, he pondered the recent events, wondering about their reality, because how could he possibly do such a thing? Holding the officer's gun he had acquired earlier, he decided to test his abilities. Pointing the gun ahead, he fired, his power activated, and with astonishing speed, he intercepted the bullet, catching it mid-air. Confirming his suspicions, he realized he had gained superpowers. He noticed there was no ice seal, yet wondered why there was frost on his body. Could it be related to high-speed movement, akin to a supersonic airplane? It seemed this superpower was indeed related to speed, he concluded. Though not particularly extraordinary, he had already foreseen the impending Doomsday. This ability could allow him to be one step ahead, to be fast in anticipating what was to come. As he pondered, a knock interrupted his thoughts. Opening the door, he found his landlady standing there. She inquired about the gunshot sound, and nervously, he attributed it to a malfunctioning TV remote, apologizing. She then warned him about the neighborhood's lack of security, recounting a previous robbery at a nearby supermarket. Thanking her for her concern, he watched her leave, reminding him to take care of his health by not working overtime too much. With that, he resolved to address his supply situation, but then he remembered that she had mentioned the nearby supermarket. Knowing that it should have everything he needs, he smirked and declared it was time to go stock up on food. The grocery store, filled with cameras, had only one cashier. In a flash, he grabbed so much supplies from an aisle. The bored cashier suddenly jolted by the amount of receipt coming out of the machine. She picked it up, wondering what was going on, questioning if someone had just made a huge purchase. Then she noticed a note that said, "Sorry," and urged her to leave quickly and stay safe. After reading it, she found the message strange. Fed up with recent events, this store had been robbed a few days back, and now this strange occurrence was happening. Suddenly, two people entered the store, armed, pointing their guns at her. She muttered to herself that she was really unlucky lately. The blue-haired guy demanded she hand over the money, confirming it was a robbery. He screamed so loudly that his words were heard outside, catching the attention of a mysterious figure. Suddenly, his gun began to freeze, and the whole place started to chill, leaving him bewildered by the sudden cold. The red-haired guy told his companion to look at the door. As the guy turned, the mysterious figure from earlier fully revealed itself, a terrifying, distorted monster. The blue-haired guy, thinking it was a costume, asked what kind of monster it was. His friend, however, was not as calm. He shot at the monster 3 times, but it didn't even flinch. The monster then reached out and grabbed the blue-haired guy's body like a doll, pinching his head by the skin and ripping off the top of his face. The girl, hiding nearby, instead of escaping, started taking pictures of the monster devouring the guy and posted them on TikTok. Some guards saw the pictures and were shocked, questioning if this is what young people like. The guy next to them mentioned that TikTok had become quite popular recently. Suddenly, a red message appeared on his phone, leaving him wondering what it was for a moment. They discovered that it seemed to be an emergency message from the government. The city alarm then blared, and the fat guy remarked that it seemed like something serious had occurred. The alarm instructed the citizens to pay attention, announcing itself as the Department of Homeland Security and Logistics. Hearing this, Mo realized that it was beginning, the city was experiencing a cold wave for unknown reasons. The alarm urged the citizens to please close their doors and windows, stay warm and avoid going outside. A cold wave is approaching, with Brooklyn being the first to feel its chill. Meanwhile, in Building 58 of the new district, within a regular apartment, a message from the Department of Homeland Security and Logistics reverberates, urging citizens to heed their warning. The overweight man ponders the severity of the situation, recognizing the gravity of Homeland Security's involvement. However, Blondie dismisses the concern, insisting it's likely nothing serious. The message advises residents not to panic, but to secure their homes against the impending extreme cold, urging them to stay indoors and keep warm. Meanwhile, in the same building, DeLong interrogates his men about why their hostage still hasn't divulged any information. The hostage insists he genuinely doesn't know anything. DeLong retrieves his phone from his vest and displays a picture showing the guy drugging the boss's daughter. Nervously, the hostage admits he didn't realize the woman's importance at the time. Unmoved, DeLong dismisses his excuses, remarking that someone like him can only hope for divine mercy. Seizing the guy's hand, DeLong proceeds to wield a knife, systematically cutting off his fingers. As he counts the severed digits, he reaches 6, the exact number he intended. Once done, one of his men inquires about what to do next. DeLong asserts that sins of lust warrant death by fire. Pointing out the presence of a boiler in the apartment, he orders them to throw the man into it. As they threw the man into it, one of the guys remarked, "This boiler looks quite old." He then asked if they thought it would explode with a body inside. Another guy next to him told him to stop talking nonsense and go rejoin DeLong. Suddenly, something quite unexpected happened. The boiler exploded, and the man who was still next to it was flung back. Luckily, he was caught by his friend. Meanwhile, Mo was at work. He had finally finished making a frame for cultivating crops. With the current supplies, even if he didn't go out, he could hold on for a long time, but this was not enough. Supplies would eventually run out. Sustainable self-sufficiency was the key. His plan was to build a perfect survival room that was self-sufficient. The freezing phenomenon had been going on for almost an hour, so he needed to speed up. He found this the perfect time to use his power and accelerate. Suddenly, there were knocks at his door, and he wondered who was knocking at this time. So he opened the door, feeling a sense of familiarity. It turned out to be the 2 security guards from earlier. They apologized, and Mo, recognizing them, asked what was up. Fatty explained that the broadcast had just announced a sudden drop in temperature outside and the heating was broken. He was afraid people wouldn't notice it at night, so they came to remind everyone, just to be safe. Another incident similar to this occurred in his past life. The heating malfunctioned then and wasn't repaired in time. By the time he attempted to fix it, it was beyond repair. They cannot afford to repeat the same mistake this time. It must be fixed. So, Mo asks the guards if they can take him to see it. He should be able to fix it. They agree, and after leaving his room, Mo heads upstairs. But the guard questions his destination. Mo replies that the boiler room is upstairs, only to be corrected that it's actually in the basement. Despite recalling the landlady mentioning the illegal boiler room in the apartment, Mo follows them downstairs. Upon arrival, they find the place unusually cold, and Mo notices the odd smoke, akin to cold air. Fatty calls his name, pointing out the damage. Mo quickly fixes it, but notices a blue liquid sparking a memory. Suddenly, a monster appears behind Blondie, who is confused. Tragically, the monster obliterates Blondie's head and devours his body. Mo, bewildered, questions the presence of a white-skinned creature. Meanwhile, Fatty, also puzzled, faces the creature, which turns its attention toward him. Mo's powers activate, and with super speed, he saves Fatty from the monster's imminent attack. That was close, because old Joe almost lost his head like Blondie. As the door remains open, Mo realizes he can escape as long as he can sprint at full speed. However, to his surprise, the monster keeps pace with him. This thing is looking like a titan from AOT, inching closer, and Mo, finding himself in this perilous situation, fears being consumed. He wondered if his slower speed was due to carrying Fatty. With that in mind, he glanced at the door and decided to throw Fatty out, which he promptly did. Fatty was shocked by the sudden turn of events as he landed outside of the door. Suddenly, Mo's reflexes kicked in, and he dodged the monster's groundbreaking attack. Observing it, Mo noted that the monster seemed connected to Fatty, but he wondered why. He needed to figure this out by recapping what had happened initially. When he was holding on to Fatty, the monster caught up to him. Just now, without Fatty, his speed was faster than the monster. Could there be a condition rendering his ability ineffective? As the monster lifted its hand to attack again, he swiftly dodged it, inwardly pondering that the condition had nothing to do with the monster, but must be related to Fatty. When he threw Fatty, a strange phenomenon occurred. An energy appeared when his ability was activated. Looking around, he wondered if there was a connection between these pebbles. Suddenly, a realization struck him. He knew that in his past life, humans faced these monsters with no chance of survival, so when he saw a monster, he only thought of escaping. But now, it's different. As long as his guess is correct, former prey can also become hunters. Holding the rock, he readied himself, charging up a huge attack, and with a powerful swing, he completely destroyed the monster. Just as he thought, his guess was correct. His ability can only affect targets contaminated by energy. He smirked, knowing that as long as they are contaminated by energy, he can accelerate them, thereby increasing the kinetic energy of objects. Even a small stone, when accelerated to a certain extent, can have the power of an electromagnetic cannon. A blue gust fell on the floor. It came from Mo's eye. He was confused, but he knew it was blue blood. What's going on here? He wondered. Suddenly, without receiving any answer, he fell to his knees, blood spilling from his mouth, and then collapsed onto the floor. He felt so cold, but before losing consciousness, he noticed Fatty coming towards him. He was thankful that Fatty was okay. Fatty, also known as Joe, told him not to close his eyes. However, after a while, he heard a different voice. Opening his eyes, he found himself in another location, with new faces in front of him, mentioning that the wind outside was too strong to go to the hospital. Even if they wanted to, the main gate was frozen and unable to withstand the blizzard. Joe instructed the others to find something to block the wind and to turn on the heating in the security room. The girl speculated that Mo might be poisoned, wondering what happened in the basement. As Mo felt so cold, he closed his eyes, but was urged to hold on and not fall asleep. Upon opening his eyes again, he found himself in another room, where Mrs. Fang instructed Joe to leave and find Shield Joe upstairs. When Mo closed and opened his eyes moments later, someone entered the room. Closing his eyes again, he heard a voice telling him to hang in there because they were almost there. Upon opening his eyes again, he found himself in another place, where the new character instructed Joe to leave Mo and check outside because it was chaotic. Mo felt extremely cold, and Joe knew that with Mo's low body temperature, it was a miracle he was still alive, making her wonder if he was some kind of cryogenic person. Recording 409, patient is male, aged 20 to 25, presenting suspected poisoning symptoms, currently in a coma. His vital signs remain abnormal. Body temperature is around 10 degrees C, yet his pulse and nerve reflexes show no abnormalities, which is truly remarkable. Blood separation has been completed, prompting a review of the results. Something intriguing, never seen before, caught her attention. The blood's appearance before centrifugation was indistinguishable from normal blood. However, post-centrifugation blue impurities were separated from the blood. Analysis of his blood sample will require some time, so she intends to continue observing the patient's surface characteristics. Examining the marks on his body, one might mistake them for veins at first glance, but closer inspection reveals what appears to be an allergic reaction. Suddenly, Mo opened his eyes, wondering what was happening to him. She advised him against moving randomly for now. Confused, he asked who she was. She then lit her cigarette and introduced herself as an ordinary, unlicensed black market doctor. Unable to reveal her specific name for some reason, she allowed him to call her Dr. Joe. Now, she was keen to understand how he ended up in his current state, admitting she had never seen symptoms like his before. Urging him to recount what happened in the basement, she expressed a strong interest in his case. Extremely interested, she emphasized. Currently, our protagonist finds himself in Brooklyn, where the temperature is a bone-chilling minus 29 degrees Celsius. The known world record for the lowest body temperature is 13.7 degrees Celsius. This stands as the lowest temperature ever recorded, although theoretically, the human body can tolerate 0 degrees C. However, at this temperature, body tissues freeze and cells in the body are destroyed. In fact, temperatures below 32 degrees can lead to atrioventricular tremor and ultimately death. a condition known as hypothermia. Human beings cannot survive in an environment of -29 degrees Celsius, let alone with a body temperature lower than 13.7 degrees Celsius. After checking his temperature, she instructed him to take a look for himself at his current body temperature. It's a miracle he is still alive. He wonders inwardly how he has managed to survive with a body temperature of 11.5 degrees Celsius. He ponders whether it's due to his ability, but currently he doesn't have time to dwell on this thought because there is an important plan he needs to complete as soon as possible. Suddenly, he decides to get up and stand, but he slips and falls to the floor. Joe notices him and reminds him that she had warned him not to move because his body is very weak right now. However, that's not the point. She has figured out what he possesses. In a shocking turn of events, she asks him if he has a superpower. Shocked, he asks himself how she could possibly know. Feeling pressed for time, he dismisses her inquiry as a joke. She warns him not to underestimate the doctor's powers of observation. Despite her warning, he brushes it off and attempts to use his powers, only to find them ineffective. Instead of speeding up, he spits out blue blood once more, prompting Joe to ask if he is okay. He wondered what was happening to him. He couldn't use his accelerate power. He wondered why now, of all times. Suddenly, DeLong and his men arrived in front of Dr. Joe's door. He knocked, catching the attention of the two inside. She then told him to hurry up and get up. He asked her what was wrong and who was outside. However, she just told him to lie down. He was confused about what was happening, but she instructed him that if he wanted to survive, he should just do as she said. She told him to wait here, close his eyes, and not move when he heard anything. She then opened the door, and Dalong entered, apologizing for disturbing her. She asked him what he wanted from her, to which he asked if he could come in to chat a little, to which she accepted. She asked him what he wanted, to which he replied that he heard resident 409 was receiving treatment at her place, and he had something to ask him. Joe then informed Dalong that unfortunately the person he was looking for had died due to poisoning. Laying nearby, Mo recognized the male voice as Luo Dalong. He was confused and frustrated as to why of all times that man had to be here. If he could use his acceleration ability right now, he could personally kill this guy right here and now. Suddenly Dalong noticed something, so he asked Joe if she was sure that this person was really dead. He said that he thought he saw him blink, so he told her that he would help her check if this man was really dead. Joe asked him what he meant, to which he menacingly held a sharp weapon, saying that this man might be playing dead. As Dalong was about to pierce Mo, Joe suddenly slapped him on the face and then asked him if he was questioning her abilities. Dalong's subordinates got angry, cursing at Joe, asking how dare she hit Dalong or if she had a death wish. To their shock, Dalong told his subordinates to stop, and then he apologized to the doctor. He then lit his lighter and her cigarette, saying that she had saved many of his men, so it was his fault for doubting her. He admitted that his behavior was his fault and asked her not to get angry. However, he also reminded her not to forget who had been taking care of her and her shabby, dirty clinic. He asked her to give him a response on that matter as soon as possible. Despite his request for her to think about it, she just sighed, calling his words nonsense. After he left, she told Mo to get up, acknowledging that he likely had many questions. Indeed, in his past life, Dalong had at least had a reason to kill him, but Mo wondered why this Dalong wanted to kill him the first time they met. And why did this woman want to protect him? But before all of this, he asked her where his clothes were, to which she answered if that was the first thing he was concerned about. The temperature has dropped drastically to -40 degrees Celsius. In the basement, a man recalls watching his father tend the furnace when he was young, feeling determined not to end up like him. But now, he sees his father as a hero for keeping them alive in this extreme cold. Another person reassures him that the weather will eventually return to normal, advising him not to dwell on his negative thoughts about his father. Dalong joins the conversation, asking if they expect the weather to improve soon, noting the government's silence even on the internet, suggesting they may have given up. He speculates that the cold wave could be a divine punishment. Suddenly, old Joe, tied up by Dalong, jokes about divine justice, questioning why Dalong isn't punished for his sins. Dalong defends his actions, claiming he's just maintaining order in the building by exchanging heating for supplies. Old Joe criticizes Dalong's version of order, accusing him of coercion. Dalong argues that it's a fair exchange. He provides heating and they provide supplies. a form of equivalent exchange. However, Joe didn't agree with Dalong. He called him a monster, but Dalong just smirked and said that it's a pity that the tenant in 409 seemed to have already died. Otherwise, there would be one more person to reap the benefits of the order he brings. Knowing that Dalong was talking about Mo, Joe was shocked and saddened by Mo's death. Meanwhile, in Joe's apartment, she asked Mo if he had dressed yet. If he had, she told him to come here once he was ready. He told her that she might have to wait for a bit, because even getting dressed was troublesome. After he was done, he asked her what it was, to which she asked him how long he thought he had been unconscious for. He answered 6 hours. But to his shock, she replied that it had been 6 days. She told him that a lot had happened in the past 6 days. She explained that Dalong controls the entire heating system of the apartment and demands residents exchange supplies for the right to use it. Otherwise, he cuts off their heating. She continued explaining that several residents had gone outside to find supplies. Going outside now is practically no different from committing suicide, and those who went out probably thought they would die either way. Remembering the current timeline, Dalong and the Dalong in his past life, Mo's anger burst because no matter what timeline, he is a monster. Clenching his fist, Mo asked the doctor if there was a way to recover his body. After hearing his words, she was surprised, so she told him that of course there is a way, but if he wants her to tell him, there is a condition. After all, she runs an underground clinic. She doesn't do charity work, so she asked him if he could accept it. He asked her what her condition was, because as long as he could do it, it would be done. Finding his response acceptable, she grabbed his chin and told him that she wanted him to become her research subject and allow only her to study him. She told him not to worry because her research wouldn't endanger his life. Just as she had said before, she was very interested in him. With a smile on his face, he accepted the deal. She then told him that there's a special substance in his blood, but she hadn't fully figured out what it was yet. What's certain is that these substances absorb thermal radiation. They can help him convert thermal radiation into energy usable by the human body. The phenomenon only occurs when he lacks heat. However, before absorbing a certain amount, his body will be in this cold state. Simply put, his body suddenly has a medium that can store energy. His current weak state is just hunger. After hearing that, he asked if he just needed to eat a big meal and he would be fine, to which she answered that's exactly right. But the amount needed would be very large. She didn't have that much food right now. Smirking, he told her not to worry because he had a way. Walking through the stairs to go back to his room, he inwardly said that it's a good thing he prepared in advance and went to the supermarket to shop a bit. Now, as long as he could safely get home, it's a victory. After the bad guys left, he sneaked and arrived at his apartment and then used his fingerprint to open the door. After he saw inside his room, he was shocked inwardly, asking if they had cut off the heating to his room. This could really freeze someone to death. He cursed Dalong for turning the whole room into an ice house. Looking through the things he bought, he found it, the food with the highest calories. He opened the box and it was full of chocolate. After seeing it, bad memories started to flood back in. After that, he ate it and there was no reaction. So it seemed like this amount wasn't enough. So he decided to increase the dose. After indulging in a hearty meal, something peculiar occurred. Intense pain surged through him, accompanied by an insatiable craving for heat. It felt dire, as if death loomed, causing him to collapse to his knees, gasping for breath, struggling to maintain control. Suddenly, the two earlier adversaries approached his room, astonished to find it unlocked. One speculated that Dalong intended to cut Mo's fingers to gain entry. Their surprise turned to admiration as they discovered an abundance of supplies within. However, a strange transformation overtook Mo. The once blue veins now pulsed menacingly red. Rising to his feet, he confronted the intruders, who demanded to know his identity and if he had opened the door. Meanwhile, Joe prepared to delve into the final simulation report, eager to uncover the truth about Mo's condition. The reversal of the active state proved troublesome, affecting neural activity and risking a dangerous glycogen imbalance. Back in the room, the two men berated Mo, claiming ownership of the contents, but he only returned their gaze with a menacing glare, a crimson aura enveloping him. At that moment, he lost control of his own body. 72 hours ago, Joe was in the basement, wondering what had happened there to turn Mo into this. Suddenly, she spotted something and picked it up, intrigued, then placed it in her bag. As she continued exploring, she noticed a monitor recording everything that had occurred. Realizing she needed to uncover the truth, she decided to head to the security room. However, before she could make her move, the speakers in the apartments crackled to life, and a voice addressed the resident. The person instructed everyone to ration their supplies efficiently to avoid wastage, as they now had to pay a small compensation for heating. As this announcement echoed through the building, two individuals were seen trespassing, confronting an elderly man, Old Joe. Despite his weight, they remembered DeLong's warning to keep an eye on the boiler. As we zoom in, DeLong is revealed to be the one speaking into the microphone. Confusion ripples through the building's inhabitants as they question whether this is a prank and speculate about Old Joe's involvement. However, one resident notes that the voice doesn't sound like Old Joe's. Undeterred, DeLong continues his address, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. He ominously hovers his finger near the heating button and decides to temporarily shut it off to conserve resources. After his nefarious act, he erupts into maniacal laughter. Meanwhile, Mo appears. Someone dressed similarly to Mo inquires if he hates. We then glimpse into Mo's mind, portraying him as a prisoner interrogated by the red energy, questioning his hatred towards DeLong. As DeLong's name is mentioned, Mo's eyes flare with revenge, and he defiantly confirms his hatred for him. He then grabbed the neck of one of the guys near him, and suddenly the man started burning, as if his entire body was being burned from within. However, instead of seeing the guy's face, Mo saw DeLong's face, asking him if he knew that human flesh tasted almost like beef. Those words angered him even more, so he tossed the guy out of the room and he crashed through a wall, falling near other people. They looked on, confused, scared, and shocked by the skeletal figure lying in front of them. The now dead person seemed to have fallen from the 4th floor. Meanwhile, the friend of the deceased wondered what had just happened. Looking at Mo, he questioned what kind of person he was, even pondering if Mo might be an alien. Given the red aura surrounding him, he inwardly cursed, knowing there was no way to win against Mo, so he decided to go all out. He leaped into the air, ready to strike, but Mo remained calm, wearing a smirk. Though he looked at the guy, he only saw DeLong's face leaping towards him, reminding him of the law of the jungle. Mo swiftly dodged the guy's attack, leaving him taken aback by his speed. Mo then started taunting him, and the guy attacked again, but Mo easily dodged. The guy attacked once more, but again Mo evaded. Still thinking he was fighting DeLong, Mo decided not to dodge this time. He lifted his hand, with a fierce look, dashed towards the guy, cutting him in half with his hand and speed. As the split body of the man lay on the floor, someone arrived at the scene, calling out Mo's name. Mo turned to see who it was, and he saw his ex-girlfriend Xiaoming pointing a gun at him. She shot him, but since Mo could only see the people he hated in this form, he didn't realize that the girl wasn't Xiaoming, but actually Joe. Joe reassured him not to worry because it was just some insulin. Mo started losing consciousness and fell into her arms. Joe explained that the substance she shot him with was meant to dissipate the excess heat in his body. However, something quite extraordinary happened. The cold room was now filled with greenery, leaving her confused and wondering what was going on. Hunger, the catalyst of human evil deeds, cannibalism, war, these are all events that have occurred in human history. However, with the development of agricultural technology, human society gradually tends towards stability, but hunger has never left. In this icebound world, farming is almost an impossible feat. Hunger, the catalyst of human evil deeds, is the dark history of humanity that is about to repeat itself. However, there are always exceptions, and that one exception is our protagonist's powers. Looking at Mo's unconscious body, Joe apologized to him, explaining that she had to put him to sleep again, even though he had woken up from a long coma not long ago. After glancing around, she wondered what was going on with the plants and greenery in the room. Deciding to test it, she plucked out a tomato and took a bite. The softness and flavor sent shivers down her spine because of how good it was. "This amount of food in this room should be enough for everyone in the entire apartment to eat," she said in excitement. Meanwhile, outside of this room, or should I say outside the house, the weather was intense, but somehow two people decided to venture out. Even though they wore good jackets and layers of sweaters to protect themselves from the weather, they still trembled from the coldness. The guy asked the girl how she was feeling and if she could hold on, to which she answered that she could and there should be no problem. Looking through his jacket, he remembered that there was another chocolate with him. However, she told him that she didn't need it. The guy complained that the chocolate was almost taken by Dalong, whom he called a bastard, but after checking his jacket, he didn't find it. The girl then called him dear and told him to stop looking, asking him if he didn't remember that they gave the chocolate to their darling daughter this morning. The man then looked at her for a moment, smiled, giggled, and said he totally forgot. His expression then changed to sadness as he looked down, embarrassed, and said he's indeed useless. The monster behind him seemed to agree, reaching out its pointy hand and swinging it horizontally through his face, leaving his top half completely gone. Her shock was indescribable as the monster... Bro, what the F is this? How did the author think of this creature?
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
It lifted the guy's body, then used its mouth, placed in a disturbing area, to eat him in front of his wife. Blood splashed on her face as the monster looked at her and said, "Women are more delicious," making it obvious she's its next meal. The girl was still frozen in shock, wondering what the F she's looking at. Suddenly, someone shouted, telling her not to space out. She turned toward the voice, seeing a man standing atop an unfinished building, gesturing for her to come his way and run if she wanted to live. Without hesitation, she sprinted, but her slow ass wasn't fast enough, and the monster's hand was about to kill her. With a last-ditch effort, she jumped, avoiding the monster's attack. However, the monster's force was strong enough to destroy the ground beneath them, causing her to stumble repeatedly. Now on the floor, likely injured from the impacts, she sat crying, awaiting her death. However, the guy had prepared a Molotov cocktail, which he lit and threw at the monster. Upon impact, the flammable liquid dispersed on its body, burning its left side. With this opportunity, the girl had a chance to run as the monster grieved in pain. After getting near the building, the stupid girl decided to stop and look back, noticing that it seemed like the thing didn't follow her. She found an elevator and thought it was her salvation. However, the monster suddenly appeared behind her, looking menacing as ever, with a little bit of her right side gone. In terror, shock and desperation, she started crying while pushing the elevator button, urging it to hurry. Personally, I would have told her why she stopped mid-run and looked back to see if the monster was still following her, instead of running like the Flash until she got to safety. She continually told the elevator to hurry, cursing at it as if it were a living being. Suddenly, the man from earlier shouted, telling her to close her eyes, which confused her, but then bright lights shined through the building, which the monster hated. The guy, looking cool as ever and resembling Kurt Cobain, smirked confidently and played his guitar. The sonar waves of the rock music were so powerful they resonated through the building, making the monster's unease worse as it hated rock music. The woman's name is Dorothy Perez. She had always dreamed of becoming a doctor during her childhood. However, as she grew older, fate led her down a different path, and she eventually became a nurse. It was during her time in the hospital that she met Matt, who was heavily bandaged up. As their eyes met, both blushing, it was love at first sight. They soon got married and later welcomed their daughter Maggie into the world. Eventually, they decided to move into a new apartment. Little did they know what trials awaited them. And then, it's something you and I know all too well. Whether it was a sudden freeze enveloping their world, thugs seizing control of their apartment, or monstrous creatures, Dorothy found herself questioning reality. However, nothing prepared her for the sight of a man with just a guitar managing to subdue a monster. Even after enduring so much, this is the most ridiculous thing she has ever seen and witnessed. The man still rocking hard, annoying the monster even more as the noise is making her go crazy. Leaning in to kill him, he smirked and then pressed a button with his leg. Why did he do that, you may ask? Well, the answer to that is because that was his trap. He released many rebars that dropped from above the monster and then fell on top of it, piercing through its body and dropping until it was buried under the many rebars that fell down. It struggled for a moment to get out, but fortunately for the humans, it died, meaning it's all over. Dorothy fell on her knees in relief that all of this is finally over. But at what cost? Her husband is dead now, but suddenly the guy reached out his hand to help her up. But brother, what's that, brother? Her mucus was all over her hand. She better wash that before touching bro's hand. However, this Giga Chad alpha male Rizzler looked at her with a comforting smile and reassured her that it's all okay now. A few moments later, she sat near a fire with a gloomy face while gazing at her family portrait from her necklace. The guy came back, gave her a tissue, and paid respects to her husband, then sat next to her. He lit his cigarette and dropped the hardest quote ever. Bro said, "Dust to dust, ashes to ashes." After blowing out the smoke, he continued, "Besides mourning the dead, We also need to protect the living, right? Dorothy looked at him with a confused expression, and he returned her gaze with an embarrassed expression, knowing he just uttered the shittiest quote ever. He sighed and remained quiet for a moment before attempting to introduce himself, but she beat him to it, saying her name first. Dorothy! Nervously, he introduced himself as Corbin. She thanked him for saving her life, to which he simply replied, "You're welcome." Curious, she asked if he was also going out to find supplies, to which he replied that his situation is a bit complicated. He then told her to hold on for a moment because he had something to show her. Taking out a picture, she explained that he came from Seattle, looking for a friend. However, upon arriving here, he was trapped by the cold wave. Showing her the picture, he pointed to his friend, the one with the hat, stating they played in a band together in high school. Looking at the picture, she recognized the guy who lives in room 409. For the slow people watching, that's our protagonist. Suddenly, a deafening rumble shook the building, accompanied by a cacophony of noise from outside. They decided to investigate, only to be met with a scene reminiscent of a scaled-down version of the rumbling from Attack on Titan. Alien-like creatures with pointed, swirling features strode by, while dog-like monsters darted alongside it with alarming speed, enough to rattle the entire neighborhood. Realizing the monsters were heading toward the apartment Dorothy had come from, they felt a sense of dread. Meanwhile, Mo finally opened his eyes, wondering when he passed out again. To his shock, he was greeted by two healthy melons. He was in shock and panicked, wondering what was happening. After finishing what she was doing, she noticed that he was awake, and she said it was good because she already put it on him. Confused, he wondered what she put on him. Upon closer inspection of himself, he noticed many things put on him. She explained that she just put on a safety measure for him. Inwardly, he nervously said, "Safety, as in this collar." Collars, one of the oldest pieces of ornament in the world, their meaning has always been changing. In the past, they were symbols of slavery, representing control and ownership. But now, they could also be toys for adults. Joe reassures Mo not to worry, explaining that what's around his neck is definitely not for those purposes. Confused, Mo inwardly admits he wouldn't have thought of anything dirty if she hadn't mentioned it. He then clarifies that the condition he agreed to was to be her research subject, not her slave. She agrees, stating that he is indeed a research subject, and the collar is just a special monitoring tool. She then reminds him of what she told him about the things inside his body. Coming closer to his ears, she says she can help him absorb heat and store it. From the looks of it now, the collar has more than just one function. It was specially made to prove her hypothesis. She explains that when his blood sugar levels are too high, it activates another state of that thing. This collar will change from blue to red when his blood sugar is too high. Confused, he asks what she is talking about and what another state means. Smirking, she asks if he remembers what happened 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes ago? He thinks to himself inwardly in shock. Trying to recall, his memories seem scattered as he can't remember what had happened. Suddenly, she tells him not to worry. It's okay if he can't remember because she is here to figure out what's going on. After all, it's also part of their research, isn't it? Inwardly, Mo admits he always feels like this woman has a hold on him. Well, he also really wants to know what's going on inside his body, and once he figures it out, he vows to definitely have the upper hand. Suddenly, she clicks on a button, and a sudden pain courses through his body. Then his left hand turns red, making him wonder what this is. Looking at the IV bag containing 25% glucose, he is shocked. Glancing at Mo, who is now completely red, she is impressed by the strong reaction, but first, she needs to record the data. However, Mo is inwardly confused about what is being done to him. She then says she almost forgot something. As Mo asks what she is going to do, she squats down near him and puts a plant right next to him. Mo is confused while looking at it, but suddenly his eye turns red, and then a huge red aura surrounds the entire room. He is enraged as he shouts, "You dare to trick me!" Suddenly he smirks and says, "Quite amusing." With super speed, he gets off the seat and starts walking toward the plant, which is small, but the closer he gets, the longer the plant becomes. With each step toward it, it grows, and tomatoes start appearing. Now, with a wider look at the room, we see that it wasn't Mo, but the parasite that had entered him. It says that he should be able to see it, to which Mo asks, "What is going on?" Parasite then answered that they had met before. Mo asked, You are... Me? He then looked at the doctor and said he think he is hallucinating. However, the parasite came near him and said she couldn't hear him now. Making sure the parasite wasn't lying, Mo checked and noticed that the doctor had no reaction, meaning she really couldn't hear him. He then asked the parasite if this was his doing, to which it smirked and said, sort of, but also not. Confused and a bit angry, he asked what it meant by that. He also asked who it really was and why it looked exactly like him. To answer his first question, it said that to be precise, it was both of them together because, after all, it alone couldn't achieve this level. To answer his other question, it smiled and then took off its hood, saying that maybe this would help him remember something. Mo was completely shocked as the parasite showed its eyes, asking if he remembered it now. Searching through his memory, Mo remembered that he saw it in his past life. It then agreed and said that it is currently connected to him. It also explained that his powers and ability to resurrect were all because of it. It then transformed into another form and reached out its hand towards him, saying that they should get along nicely. The National Security and Logistics Bureau, a branch of the National Security Agency, advertised as NSAL or National Logistics Agency, is one of the few departments in the country that can operate independently even after other government agencies have collapsed. The National Logistics Agency has its own medical unit, administrative units, and even military units. It can be said to be the last guarantee of civilization in the world after the government has collapsed. Meanwhile, inside their headquarters, someone called out Xiao Luo and asked her if the network still hasn't been restored yet. Amidst the place, a picture of Dr. Zhou with another girl is seen. Luo then answered to the person named Barbara by telling her that she asked this question for the 28th time in the last 2 days. Barbara sighed, and then Luo said that the information department says it's a hardware issue, but they can't reach the engineering department now. She told her that she knows the situation outside, so a lot of their data and information are still using the most primitive one. Barbara then answered that she is right. She then said that, to put it bluntly, they're just passing the buck to each other. She then got up from her seat and stretched and asked if the report had finished. Luo answered, almost. Leaning down to see, Barbara says that it's good enough as is, so she asks her to send it to her first. Luo asks what about the rest, to which Barbara asks her if she is stupid. She says that Baldy won't read it seriously anyway. After giving him the files, Baldy says that the situation is urgent now, while Barbara was inwardly annoyed by him. He says that their National Logistic Agency is not the time to discuss these things. Baldy, named Frank Cordick, is a National Logistic Agency Strategic Decision Department agent. He yelled that first climate change occurred, then cyber attacks, and their current communication methods are completely unusable. He continued, saying that their frontline operatives have also been out of contact for 48 hours. Not to mention those agents who have not yet been activated. They are in a war. They need to act because war never changes, and his soldiers. His words got suddenly cut as he suddenly received a huge kick on the balls by Barbara. She angrily told him to not bother with his political correctness at this point. A few moments later, at the National Logistic Agency Biological Defense Laboratory Sample Observation Room. What a long-ass name for a room. Barbara asks Frank what he thinks now and if he understands why she is anxious. Frank was completely flabbergasted. "Oh my God!" he screamed while looking at a creature through the window. Barbara told him that they found this thing near the bunker, this big monster constantly repeating, "We are Shell." Luo then says from their observations, this creature mutated from humans. Frank was shocked to hear that. Then Barbara told him to take a closer look at the thing around the monster's neck. Upon a closer look, Frank noticed the necklace around its neck and recognized that this monster is the guy from the Field Operations Department. He wonders what's going on here, to which Barbara answered that it probably happened before the network went down. She explains that a missing agent signal was detected just before the network crashed, appearing not far from the bunker, but when the security department found him, he had no signs of life. And based on the data before the network outage, they can confirm that he is the activated agent, codenamed Silver Hammer. However, 25 hours later, the body in the morgue underwent a mutation, turning into what they see in front of them now. They also obtained some information from the CIA before the network outage, confirming that this creature had been monitored before the cold wave and other related abnormal events. This footage is from the same supermarket, and these two are the first monsters. The first one, which they temporarily refer to as Shell, and the second one is a psychic, whom they temporarily refer to as number 0. Damn, our protagonist got caught. Meanwhile, Mo was still in shock, wondering what is happening right now, because a second ago it was a bug, and now in front of him it's turned into a beautiful girl. As it looked at its new form, it looked at Mo with a grin, and then sat on top of him, and said that humans get shy when they see the opposite sex naked. Mo was still wondering if this is an illusion. He looked around and noticed that the surrounding environment is like time frozen. Suddenly, the parasite answered him. Mo was shocked to that, asking how it can hear what he is thinking. She answered that after all, they are now merged. Mo found her explanation quite strange. However, she continued explaining that he can see her now because the doctor injected him enough sugar to activate its consciousness. She continued, saying that he should have noticed. Now the her he sees is just an illusion in his mind. Mo then says that Dr. Joe said that the substance inside him is her, and the other substance means that it has been activated. To answer him, she said that, strictly speaking, those are its blood, and it's that part that gives him his abilities. He then asked it why it is in his body, to which it said that he is really a curious little thing. It explains that they are different from humans. They're not part of this dimension. Mo was confused and asked it to explain more. It explained that they need to parasitize the bodies of the natives of various dimensions in order to gain the ability to understand this dimension. Mo was annoyed, wondering what this is or if it's a cheesy novel or something. It explains that their race doesn't have what humans call names because they themselves cannot define themselves. The human concept of time is meaningless to them because for them, time is not linear. They've been drifting through various dimensions since birth. This is their ability, but also a shackle because they cannot interfere with the material of any dimension on their own. They can only parasitize intelligent beings of together dimensions in order to use their bodies to break the shackles of dimensions. It must be difficult for Mo, a human, to understand. She turned and looked at him and said that they want to hear their names. They want to see the castles built with time. Meanwhile, Mo asks what it meant by shell, to which it answered that he would find out soon enough. Then it says that if he needs anything, he should remember to come find her. With a clap of its hands, it disappeared and movement resumes in the room. Things fell around Mo, while in other rooms of the apartment, decapitated heads were dropping. People ran while others were eaten. Monsters came through the windows, slaughtering and chasing. From the stairs to the basement, no place was safe. A guy stood before the locked basement door, cursing the timing. Now trapped, with two monsters right behind him, they leaped, killing him, destroying the door, and entering the basement, chasing Dalong's minions. Shocked, scared, and confused, they were killed without answers. Old Joe, still tied up, recognized the monsters as the ones that killed his colleague earlier. He noticed they were sucking the blood of their victims. It seems they hadn't noticed him yet. He needed to find a way to escape. Breaking the rope with tools would be tough, and the pillar had no sharp edges. With no other choice, he resorted to his old tricks from his younger days. He grabbed his thumb, dislocated it, and then pulled his hand out. He inwardly acknowledges it's a good thing he has these old injuries from his youth. They tend to dislocate easily now. While the monsters haven't noticed him yet, he should find another way around. But in this situation, he can't go empty-handed. He needs to get to the security room. There are weapons in the safe. Thankfully, those dumb thieves haven't realized it's a weapons locker. Suddenly, a monster notices him, and he's now caught in a dire situation. Meanwhile, Joe says that just as she thought, these plants responded to Mo's influence. They are able to grow rapidly in a short time. Although that's true, he can't use his ability for extended periods, otherwise he will end up in a weakened state. She has collected the data she needed for the most part. Angered, he told her to then hurry up and undo the things on him. Suddenly, a loud sound caught their attention. As they wonder what it was, their gaze went towards the door, and the noise became louder. She wonders what is happening, but Mo knew what it was. He had a hunch, and if it's what he thinks it is, the situation is really bad. Suddenly, a monster entered the room and stood right in front of them. Suddenly, the parasite appeared once more and told him that it's the shell. He then turned around and asked why it is still here, but it hushed him with its finger and told him that now is not the time to be stuck on this. If he doesn't want to do something soon, the doctor will be killed. Suddenly, Suddenly, Mo's power activated as he got up from his seat, and then, with super speed, he lifted Joe respectfully and in a flash dodged the attack of the monster. As the monster landed on the wall and Mo successfully stopped it, he looked at Joe and asked if she is okay, but was shocked at her current expression that he thought a cold woman like her could never make. She then jokingly says that it's quite amusing to experience his ability up close like this, but suddenly the monster started its movement again. She had never seen this type of creature before, so she asks what it is, to which he answered, white skin. But he changed it to shell. He doesn't really know, but the thing he knows is that it is dangerous. He then let her down and confidently told her to let him handle this thing. She then says that although he already knows, she still wants to remind him not to overuse his abilities, to which he answered, sure. He then told her that he has been meaning to say, though her approach may be a bit awkward, but judging by the result, she has indeed helped him a lot, and then he thanked her. She then looked at him in silence, and then she told him this is not the time to talk about that. He then told her that after they deal with these small fries, he will be sure to thank her properly. Many monsters entered the room and they rushed toward him. Mo was shocked by the brainless monsters' collective actions. Dealing with one is manageable, but now it might cause him to fall into a weakened state again. Joe then asked him what's wrong. She was looking forward to how he'd thank her. He then told her she might have to wait a little longer for that. Now the monsters are near him, making Mo have no choice but to face them head on. While dodging their attacks, Joe decided to take out her tablet to see where his limit lies. Mo inwardly says that if he keeps using acceleration continuously based on past experience, he will definitely end up weakened again before he finishes them all. But in his current situation, he just needs to use it because it's necessary. Even after dispatching many so far, other monsters tried a pincer attack on him, making him say that these monsters aren't as dumb as they seem. He grinned and said that he's not their prey anymore. He then activated his powers and explained that when acceleration is activated, time slows down relative to him, allowing him to observe the enemy's movements and predict their attacks. This way, he can easily dodge attacks even without using acceleration. The same goes for offense. Even barehanded, as long as he accelerates his fists to a certain degree, he can unleash a supersonic boom. His attack was so powerful it obliterated the monsters caught by the attack. Noticing that the surviving monsters are hesitating to attack him now, Mo asks them what's wrong or if they are feeling scared now. Sticking a zesty pose, he says he is just getting started. Meanwhile, Joe says that although the calorie consumption hasn't decreased, the efficiency of ability usage has been optimized. It only consumed less than 10%, which she found interesting. She then called out to him and told him that the move he did earlier, he can let loose with it. After hearing that, he says that as he thought, she is monitoring his body's condition. Even so, he readied himself once more and used a new attack he called Enthusiast Quack. After his attack, he exhaled and the blue veins of his body started turning visible again, and the percentage went down to 83%. She then said that it seems he has mastered his abilities quite well as he now looks more composed and confident. But now there's a new question. He seems to know a lot about these things, so she wants him to tell her everything he knows. Meanwhile, in the basement, a monster is seen lying on a pile of blood. Upon closer look, it lay atop of old Joe. He suddenly opened his eyes and wondered what is happening and what is all of this blood. He then noticed he pierced the monster's stomach. He pushed it out of his body and wondered what just happened. Recollecting what had happened, he remembered the monster jumping toward him, and without this crowbar that was next to him, he would have been done for. But if these monsters show up again, he might not be so lucky next time. Suddenly his phone rang, which made him confused because he thought that the network was down. It was an unknown number. He decided to pick it up and said hello. The one talking then said, "Good day, Josh Castillo, or should I call you Mr. Cursed Blade?" Those words seemed to have shocked old Joe. Mo recounted the entire story to her, detailing everything he knew about the white skins. However, he kept to himself the part about dying once and then traveling back in time. This was as she expected. She then asked him to help zip up her clothes if there was nothing else. While nervously zipping up her outfit, he asked her about the sudden change of clothes. She explained that it was a hazardous environment protection suit from her previous workplace, but it was just a prototype and had some flaws. Once he finished, she glanced at the ceiling and remarked that the white skins had entered through the maintenance ducts, likely damaging the heating pipes along the way. She asked him if he hadn't noticed the temperature dropping and getting colder. Suddenly, a loud knock was heard outside the room, capturing both their attention. They opened the door to find the daughter of the couple from earlier standing there. Joe wondered aloud why a child was there, while Mo remembered that she and her parents lived next door to him. The child abruptly ran away, shocking Mo, who called out for her to wait. Joe muttered that this was why she hated kids. Following the child, Mo's eyes widened in shock as he saw the entire hallway drenched in blood and littered with half-eaten corpses. They continued to follow the little girl who seemed to be leading them somewhere, carefully avoiding stepping on the corpses. However, Mo noticed gunshot wounds on these dead people. After catching up to the little girl, Mo told her that it was dangerous here, but the sad-looking child just pointed at old Josh lying on the floor, covered in blood and appearing dead. Inwardly, Mo cursed, recalling the memories he had with old Josh. The old Josh from his previous life before his regression was a kind man who shared his food with everyone but tragically died at the hands of the Whiteskins too. Mo kneeled, placed his hand on old Josh, and murmured that in the apocalypse, kind-hearted people always meet a bad end. However, something unexpected happened. Old Josh placed his hand on top of Mo's, shocking and terrifying him as he thought Josh had become a zombie. But old Josh just grinned and told him that he wasn't dead yet and still owed him a drink. Though he tried to appear well, he certainly didn't look it. The child then grabbed Dr. Joe's hand, who in turn looked at the child with a quite scary expression. The child called her Big Sister and asked if she was a doctor, explaining that her mum had told her doctors wear a red cross on their clothes, and her big sister here had a red cross too. The child asked if she could help her Uncle Josh. The kid was too cute for Joe to refuse, so she said that this time she would make an exception and aid Josh for free. As she knelt to help him, she asked how he ended up like this. He answered that it was a long story. To sum it up, he said that after leaving the boiler room, he headed to the security room. However, the ground floor was already swarming with monsters, so he ascended via the fire escape route. Along the way, he encountered some survivors, but as the monsters kept coming, they had to keep moving upward. Then the villain made his move again. Dalong, brandishing his gun, started shooting the civilians who were trying to ascend, causing them to fall and become easy prey for the monsters. "You bastard!" he shouted at Dalong, demanding to know what he was doing. Dalong just grinned and replied, "I am, of course, stalling for time by using their dead bodies." After saying that, he resumed shooting. He was so merciless that he was about to shoot a little girl, saying, "Survival of the fittest is a rule set by God when they created the world." He pulled the trigger, but fortunately for the child, old Josh jumped in front of her and took the bullet instead. After that, Dalong continued his ascent, while old Josh made a final stand against the monsters. Joe, after removing the bullet from old Josh, told him he was lucky it hadn't hit anything vital, but he was losing too much blood, and they needed to find a safe place soon to treat him. "Luo Dalong," Mo said angrily as he turned to leave. Old Josh asked him what he was doing. Mo activated his powers, turned around, and with a cool gaze, responded that he had something to take care of. Meanwhile, Dalong kept shooting at the civilians trying to escape, ignoring their pleas for mercy. He called them weaklings and was proud of his actions, believing that the bodies strewn along the way would delay the monsters for a long time. Upon reaching his destination, he remarked, "Although this place is an old warehouse, it should be the safest spot in this building." He wondered if there were any supplies inside. As the door opened and he was about to enter, his face turned to terror. He spun around faster than your dad leaving for milk and pointed his gun at Mo, who menacingly said, "We finally meet again," while removing his hoodie, revealing his angry and vengeful expression. "Aren't you dead?" Dalong asked, shooting at Mo. But Mo didn't answer. With swiftness and effortless grace, he maneuvered through the bullets, dodging them. After getting close enough, he used his momentum and super speed to kick Dalong's leg, slicing it in half. He didn't stop there. He did the same to DeLong's arm, using his hand this time. He then forcefully grabbed DeLong's face so hard that his eyes seemed about to pop out, lifting him up with one hand and bringing him closer to the balcony. DeLong, with a painful voice, asked why he was doing this, because, as he recalled, they had no grudges. As Mo held him over the edge, he said, "No grudges? Right. In your perspective, those things you did to me haven't happened yet." He continued, explaining that after he regressed in time, instead of seeking revenge, he put his energy into building a safe house for the apocalypse. Now, he found that idea ridiculous because innocent people died because of it. It made him angry, but this anger wasn't just directed at DeLong. It was also directed at himself, his naive self that didn't do the right thing before it was too late. He then burned DeLong with his fire, letting him fall from the 4th floor down into a pool of monsters. With a confident expression, Mo declared, "From now on, every intrusion will be met with immediate 100-fold retribution, because in this icebound apocalypse, there's no mercy." A few minutes later, they found themselves in a safe room, sitting near a fire to warm up. Joe noted that it seemed the landlord had used this place as a warehouse, but all the really useful items were gone, leaving only a few planks behind. She began smoking again and shifted her gaze towards Mo, who sat alone, talking to himself. He wondered inwardly why, even though he had taken his revenge, it didn't feel real. It felt as if nothing had happened. His thoughts were interrupted when Joe slapped him and demanded to know what he was thinking about. Sitting next to him, she said she didn't know if he had a prior run-in with DeLong or if people with superpowers were just that impulsive, but judging by the results, he had done a good thing by eliminating DeLong. With a sincere smile, she thanked him for taking out that bastard. Confused, Mo asked her if she had a grudge against DeLong too. Joe fell silent, recalling a memory of DeLong pointing a gun at a crying girl's head, presumably her mother, while a dead man, likely her father, lay next to them. A young Joe had been hiding inside a vent, observing the scene. She remained silent, looking sad as she thought of it. But Mo noticed and told her he wouldn't ask further. Despite the relative safety of the room, it had always been used for storage and had no heating. From the layout, it seemed there should be heating pipes installed. Old Josh was injured, and there were kids like little Maggie with them. They couldn't rely solely on the heat from the fire. Moreover, the creatures outside, referred to as white skins, were infiltrating almost everywhere. They needed to reinforce the room. Mo suggested that the materials in the warehouse should suffice to reinforce the room. To turn the heating back on, they would need to go down to the basement. However, the entire building was now filled with those monsters. If they didn't fix the heating, they risked getting sick. As he spoke, the little girl unleashed a spray of germs with a powerful sneeze. They would be left to perish if they didn't repair the heater. Old Joe glanced at Mo and mentioned he had a solution, but it would be messy. Moments later, the garbage chute door, previously closed, suddenly burst open as Mo tumbled out. Covered in trash, he muttered that he hadn't expected old Josh to suggest using the garbage chute to reach the basement. When Mo looked ahead, his eyes widened in disbelief at a disturbing scene. Pale, human-like figures and bodies entangled in a nest, seemingly harvesting blood. Suddenly, loud noises emanated from the chute, making him wonder if it could be the white-skinned creatures, filling him with dread. To his surprise, it was Dr. Joe who emerged. With a thud, she landed on top of him, creating an awkward moment as Mo complained that she was blocking him. From another angle, it seemed like Mo was holding her awkwardly, and she told him to move his hand if he wanted to get up. Just then, footsteps were heard, and she covered his mouth to keep them quiet, a wise move as a white-skinned creature passed by. Once it was gone, they quickly hid, and she asked what the humanoid white-skinned creature was. Mo admitted he didn't know and inquired why she was there. She explained that old Josh hadn't told him that the boiler room switch required 2 people to operate. She also warned that he was nearing his weakened state, which would cause him to collapse if it happened there. Suddenly, a massive, muscular, white-skinned humanoid approached them, appearing confused and not noticing their presence. Mo wondered what this creature was, as it seemed different from the others. With his remaining strength, he felt he would lose if he fought it. According to old Josh, these white-skinned beings weren't just consuming humans, they were sucking blood. The pipes seemed to be transporting blood, making Mo wonder if it was being used to create monsters like the giant one. Meanwhile, the little girl looked out the window and saw something. She asked what it was. Old Josh thought he had an answer and came near the window, ready to explain. But his words stopped as he saw an indescribable scene on the street. Giant white creatures as big as buildings were connected to a larger one that looked pregnant, absorbing blood into its belly. Corbin and Dorothy were outside and saw the huge thing. Corbin thought it should be dead, but Dorothy said she didn't know. At least, it didn't seem like it would attack them. Suddenly, lights blinked through a window. Corbin noticed it and wondered if it was Morse code. Dorothy didn't know what Morse code was, so Corbin explained. He said it was a signal made by turning a light on and off. Different patterns represented different letters, numbers, and punctuation marks in English. Old Josh was the one flicking the light. He hoped they would understand the message and not come inside. Dorothy asked Corbin what the light code was saying. Corbin only understood a little, so he told her it seemed like the light was inviting them to enter the building. As they went in, she asked if he was sure. He replied that he was sure and reminded her that her daughter was waiting for her. Old Josh was mad and shocked that they did the opposite of what he tried to tell them. He didn't want them to come in. Meanwhile, back with Mo and Joe, Mo wondered what they should do. Their destination was right in front of them, but the giant white creature was blocking their way. If all else failed, they would have to push through, he thought while hiding. Suddenly, noises from the vents caught the creature's attention, so it turned around to follow the noise. This gave our heroes a chance to get out of their hiding spot. Mo inwardly thanked goodness that the creature was lured away by the noise. As they walked towards their destination, Joe told Mo that if he looked closely, these creatures seemed to be formed from the previous smaller white ones. There were also human bodies building a nest with them, which was sickening to think about. As they walked, they didn't notice a white creature forming behind them. It started as a squishy texture, slowly recombining to form a strong and distinct white creature. It put its hand in its guts, took out a long piece, and used magic to turn it into a sword, transforming from squishy to very sharp, like a metal sword. As it walked slowly behind Mo, he felt uneasy. He then ran as fast as he could to shield Joe, who was about to be slashed by the monster. Mo used his super speed to shield her, but the monster was as fast as him. Mo ended up getting slashed on the back. After putting some distance between them, Mo was in pain and disbelief that it was faster than him, even with his powers. Looking at the menacing swordsman monster, Mo said that this one was not like the other white creatures at all. Things are about to get real. Like, comment and subscribe if you want more.